So we'll now introduce our next keynote speaker. Matt Gough is an innovation director for Mace, and he's going to tell us how they are challenging the business model to move from construction to production whilst reducing the impact on the environment at speed. Now I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to exit because I think you're waiting for a cue from me. Let's give them another round of applause. Thank you, guys. Continuing introducing Matt, he's leading Mace in its ambition to catalyse the next evolution of the construction industry, focused on the disruption of their traditional business model across markets and geographies. Matt is at the forefront of the company's digital transformation and redefining how Mace design, build and operate the built environment for which they are responsible. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Matt Gough.
I'm not a builder. Well, I was a scaffolder once upon a time for a year, but that's a very different story to today's one. I'm an engineer, a bit like you, but a software engineer. I studied computer science in the early 2000s as part of my degree, and on graduating, moved into the music industry for 10 years. That's me 15 years ago. We used to pack thousands of people into that shed and call it a music festival, and now we're packing thousands into the Melbourne Exhibition Centre. Good morning. While in music, this is relevant, I promise. While in music, I lived disruption. During the 10 years I worked there, digital ripped that traditional industry apart. First with the internet, and then in 2001 with the launch of iTunes. In 10 years, the way that the industry made money, by shifting millions of physical products on a daily basis, was ripped apart. It reduced by 2/3. We lost record shops, record labels, so many jobs. It got really nasty back there for a period of time. And thankfully, that industry is now on its way up. But for an industry to experience change, some companies embraced it. Some, perhaps more the big incumbent ones, tried to ignore it or pretend that, they could squash it. That's why in the foyer today, we would talk about a Spotify, but not necessarily a Sony Records. And it kind of encapsulates change. Change for that industry came fast. It's a bit like the Ernest Hemingway quote when asked how he went bankrupt. Well, it happened in two ways. First gradually, and then suddenly. So in 2011, I swapped one adversarial industry for another and joined Mace in construction. And everyone was talking about how digital was about to disrupt the construction industry. Fantastic, I thought. I've been there, done that. I've got that t-shirt. I sized up the big companies. I checked out all the construction startup scene. And then that was 8 years ago. And to be honest, not a lot has changed. And it turns out in our industry that digital is not the panacea. It is enabling us to do lots of things more efficiently, perhaps better. But so far, we're not applying it to do better things. And that is what we believe is the transformation or disruption, because boy, do we need it. We have been changing gradually, but it's about to come suddenly. And this morning I'll talk to you about that transition and the choices that we all have to make in order to accelerate that transition. I'll demonstrate to you how we at Mace are applying manufacturing principles to our traditional construction processes to enable a better construction industry. I'll also share how the UK government is helping to accelerate that change. And importantly, our collective responsibility in accelerating it faster, both responsibly and sustainably. Because we are on a point of disruption, but it's not coming from digital, it's coming from the climate emergency. And it's on all of us to help to make that transition, and fast. But first, we'll start with a juxtaposition. We're going to frame the challenge as the industry we have versus the industry we need. First, we should perhaps give ourselves all a bit of a pat on the back and recognition that as an industry, we do some amazing things, right? Here's some projects that Mace has worked on in the past 10 years in this region. Fantastic, beautiful, a calling card for the wonderful stuff that we can achieve and known the world over. Take this project as an example. This is Tiffany's flagship store on Pitt Street in Sydney. Interesting for two reasons. Firstly, the City of Sydney doesn't like branding on the street much, which is difficult when you're a global brand building a flagship store. And secondly, just below the pavement there is the new Sydney Metro line. So while renovating, we couldn't add any more weight or load to the building, certainly on that perimeter. So to get the desired finish required by Tiffany, the team had to come up with a very complex engineering transfer structure that sort of moved the load, and also had to test 18 different types of stone to get that marble heavy finish desired by Tiffany. Fantastic, complex, one-off, unique, the sort of project that we all love within the industry. But as well as those flagship projects, there is a harsh reality that sometimes as an industry, what we do just isn't good enough. In June 2017 in the UK, we had the Grenfell tragedy in which 72 people tragically lost their lives due to a devastating fire. It's a damning blight on our industry. The Hackett report, commissioned by the UK government to understand what went wrong, points to industry failure at all levels. Ineffective policies and procurement, ineffective application of those policies, poor workmanship, bad choice of materials, and in some respects, poor choices. Poor choices is a theme on the Morandi Bridge in Genoa, Italy too. Again, in August 2017, when 43 people tragically lost their lives and 600 people were left homeless due to the failure and collapse of that bridge, even when it had been pointed out the bridge was in need of maintenance and upkeep. And closer to here, more locally, we have examples such as the Opal Tower, evacuated just months after it opened its doors in 2018. The industry we have is not great, but we do have a choice. And that's to build towards the industry that we, society, needs. Why am I here talking about that? Well, Mace is a company that was founded in 1990 in pursuit of a better way for our industry. Increasingly, our focus in that pursuit of a better way is not just how we operate, but how the industry operates. To achieve our ambitions, we just can't do this on our own. So we're working with our clients and our suppliers and our friends that we meet at conferences like this, because we all need to get better. The rising tide lifts all boats. In 1990, when we set out, a better way was like 5% better. That was okay. That was more than enough to win more work, deliver better projects, stand out from the crowd. But today, our 5% is probably not enough, because we live in an age of exponential growth, and we all need to do more. The Justin Trudeau quote from the World Economic Forum, "The pace of change has never been so fast and will never be this slow again," is bang on, because we do have some exponential challenges coming. We've been talking about these during the convention, right? So, by 2050, there will be 10 billion people on this planet. That is beyond rapid population growth. It took 123 years to go from 1 billion to 2 billion people on planet Earth. We're about to add 3 billion in just 3 decades. Those people are going to go and live in cities. If they're not there already, they will migrate to the cities with urbanization at a scale never seen before. We have to build the equivalent of a New York City every month to accommodate that change for the next 30 years. That is buildings and infrastructure to be designed, constructed, maintained, and operated at some scale. Let's just think about that, right? In Sydney, the projected growth is 4 million to 8 million. How do we keep the natural splendor of these beautiful northern beaches while dealing with an increase in population density of that ilk? And the same stats are true of Melbourne, 4 million to 8 million. I mean, looking outside, you guys seem to have this tall building thing pretty well licked. But what's the plan? Are we going taller? How do we accommodate that change? If it's any solace to those in the room, the housing crisis is not just a local problem, it's a global problem. In the UK, we need 250,000 homes per year to provide the accommodation that our population needs. In 2017, we built 148,000. Decent, but it's not good enough. Supply is only part of the problem of that housing crisis, but it's a part of the problem that the construction industry should and could be able to solve. We need to increase our productivity by 30% to get to those levels of supply that are required. And I'll just pull it back. It's interesting that we refer to this as a crisis. Be it fact or folklore, in Chinese, crisis is written as two symbols. One means threat, the other means opportunity. At Mace, we're thinking opportunity. And so is the UK government. They're investing billions in transforming the construction sector in the UK, industrialising construction, which presents a slightly different paradox for us to consider. Does industrialising construction mean taking all work off-site in a factory environment, modular, volumetric? Or is industrialising construction creating the factory conditions on-site, trying to control everything a bit better? In terms of the off-site, Homes England, a UK government-funded agency responsible for the delivery and upkeep of homes, are investing billions in our traditional industry to accelerate the delivery of accommodation. And they're also making direct bets on factory-produced homes. This year, they've invested 30 million as part of a debt equity deal that will see Japanese housing provider Sekisui Homes make an entrance to the UK market. They've also just put 30 million into another provider, Ilka Homes. And it's not just taxpayers' money that is going into the creation of this industry, but private finance is flowing in too, names such as Goldman Sachs and the Reuben brothers. The modular housing revolution is very much underway. But we're not sure that all work does take place in a factory. So we're industrialising construction on our sites too. We have a UK construction innovation hub, a collaboration between academia and the public and private sectors. The Manufacturing Technology Centre are responsible for creating the product family architecture and engineering the processes that will allow us to create a manufactured construction industry. The BRE, responsible for assuring and certification of all UK construction work, have the gig to assure it all. And the University of Cambridge, working with Digital Built Britain, the people who made the PAS standards that are now our international ISO 19650 BIM standard, are creating the digital backbone for it all. Bryden Wood are the architect, Mace is the construction manager, the UK supply chain is primed, prepped and ready to go, and together we will be assembling buildings like the automotive industry assembles cars. It will be faster, safer, cheaper, and better. We're talking about a platform strategy for building buildings, standardized products and components that can be configured and assembled to create high-performing buildings, giving us better outputs and, more importantly, outcomes for both the industry and for society. We refer to that as moving from construction to production. At Mace, our journey to do that started many years ago. We've been using off-site manufacturing to deliver complex construction challenges for over 25 years. But in the last 5 years, we've really put our foot on the gas. What you can see here is a project called N08. In 2014, we were appointed by our client, Qatari Diyar Delancey, to build these 2 towers and podium building that, on completion, delivered 480 much-needed new homes for Londoners. It was a project that was designed traditionally, procured traditionally, but built using a radically new way of construction for the UK, a first for the industry. Our project team at N08 were tasked with changing how we build. There were a number of project risks to be mitigated. Incidents when working at height continue to be the biggest cause of fatalities within our industry. The wind, particularly there in East London, stops cranes and causes program delay. And importantly, when building residential, the critical path always gets stuck with the fit out. You just can't start laying carpets until your building is watertight. So our team found a better way. On the top of those buildings there are what we call our rising factories, 2 600-ton steel structures that jump with the building as each floor is completed. That jump, when activated, uses the equivalent force of a space rocket taking off. In a nod to Tesla just there, we call that our very own Mace X. Inside the factory is a very different environment in which to build. We're about to go into one. This is shot 100 meters up in the air and demonstrates the standard sequence that our operatives went through to build a residential floor plate. What you can see in your top left is a clock counting down from 55 hours. That's Monday morning to Saturday lunchtime, a traditional working week on any site, and the speed at which we were building each of our residential floors. What you can see is a sequence of industry standard components, things such as precast floors or twin walls or columns coming in. What is unique is not those products, we've all used those, but the sequence and the process. This is not a construction site. This is a factory floor. You will note that there's no tower cranes. All lifting is taking place on the right-hand side of the screen via those high-powered gantry cranes that allowed us to lift bigger elements, up to 20,000 tons, unrestrained by the wind. 20 tons, sorry, 20,000 tons would be a lot. Unrestrained by the wind. These stairs and these MEP modules, much larger than we could normally lift, provide the entire horizontal services for that residential floor plate, delivered and installed in just 30 minutes. You will note there's not many operatives, so on 4 of the 5 major packages, we were able to reduce the labour on site by 50%. And that is safer, as is this environment. You will note that there's no leading edge. All work takes place at eye level, and we've entirely removed that risk of working at height, and there's no chance of falls or dropping anything. Just some of the many benefits achieved within our factory process. Once our team got going, they achieved some phenomenal results. We delivered 36 stories across those 2 towers in 18 weeks. That's 30% faster than our traditional industry in the UK has ever achieved. It was our safest high-rise project ever delivered. We worked over 2 million man-hours without an incident. We were more productive, and during the construction process, importantly, we drastically reduced our impact. Off-site consolidation led to 40% less vehicle movements on site. That's less impact on the roads, that's less impact on residents, and it's less pollution. We also reduced waste by 75%. Our project team saw a better way, and they achieved some industry firsts by changing their mindset, how they think about construction. They challenged everything about how they thought high-rise construction should be completed, and achieved a phenomenal result. One person within that team is this chap here. This is Dave Bones. He's a senior construction manager, and he's been working in the industry for 40 years. We have a kind of stereotype of Dave within the industry, one of those dinosaurs that doesn't like technology and doesn't really want to change much. But here at NO8, our Dave was embracing innovation with both hands. There's a great anecdote about Dave. One day he runs into the project office and he's panicked, he's flustered, he's really freaked out. And our project director, fearing the worst, a fire, an incident on site, something terrible, says, "What's the matter, Dave?" Tony, there's loads of traffic, the crane's out of service, I'm 12 minutes late on my schedule. 12 minutes late. Not hours, not days, not weeks, or even months, like some of the delays we face on our capital projects, but Dave's working in minutes. Dave's making some good choices. It's a different mindset, a different way of thinking. Across our projects globally, our Mace teams are using that different mindset to develop, adopt, and deploy technology across all parts of the project lifecycle. In Cloney, Ireland, our team have digitized, connected, and integrated the entire construction workflow from design right through to handover and operations. They've made people's work easier and more efficient, democratizing data and integrating all on-site processes using the BIM 360 platform. That's saving people time, up to 8 hours a week, a 32% increase in productivity. We're also pioneering manufacturing techniques in order to apply our on-site planning and production control. Technology is allowing us to plan in greater detail. We've gone from capturing 150 tasks a week using paper to 350 using digital. And greater detail is giving us greater integrity. So we're not just capturing more work, we're completing more work more consistently, from 71% to 80%. And globally, we are more efficient and more productive every day through the use of technology, whether we're flying drones, using AR, VR, 360 cameras, all sorts, sensors, automation. We're designing, estimating, and delivering in digital. And we're delivering better quality projects as a result. And we're doing that at scale by empowering our people with technology. Across 6,500 staff globally, we are completing a training program in all aspects of BIM, from 3D coordination through to 6D operations. Across our supply chain, using our Mace Business School, we are training the industry to be better at tech. From MBA-level courses for our supply chain's rising stars, to digital basics on our sites and in our project offices worldwide. And the result is that we have a more empowered workforce, a happier workforce, who are choosing to embrace technology, driving up productivity, and delivering better outcomes for our clients as a result. And that's what we really mean when we talk about moving from construction to production. Because while we are achieving great things by using technology to do those things better, we still recognize there is a need to do better things. In the near future, Mace sees that we will design, manufacture, assemble, and operate the built environment in a very different way to how we do currently. In doing so, we unlock the power of our organization and the wider industry to guarantee a better outcome for our clients. And what we mean there by outcome is not those kind of construction outputs that we all love measuring, a bit cheaper, a bit faster, a few less defects. That's that nasty but necessary CapEx stuff that we all love measuring. We're talking about the purpose of buildings. We're talking about the reasons and the outcomes that we can generate, that we're all responsible for generating day in and day out. Just go back to Dave quickly. Right? So I'll be honest, I have to deal with a few Daves in my day-to-day too. We all know a Dave. Go on, shut your eyes. You can picture him now, probably. So it turns out everyone doesn't care about technology and isn't really interested in business model transformation. Strange. But what they do care about, good people, Dave included, is better outcomes, better education for kids, better healthcare for patients, better journey times for commuters, better productivity for office workers, or better futures. If we're being existential, maybe just futures. How do we start to generate and create those sorts of outcomes? Well, we all have choices to make. We've ran through some already today. Threat or opportunity? Doing things better or doing better things? Gradually or suddenly? And when it comes to the climate, denial or emergency? Possible or impossible? Why are these choices important? Well, not to go back over it, I've heard this yesterday as well, but the process of construction and the operation of buildings and infrastructure accounts for somewhere between 30 to 37% of total global carbon emissions, depending on the report that you read. Construction as a sector, and all of us who work in that sector, have a pivotal role in whether this wonderful planet that we call home remains habitable in the next few decades. We can't get the world to reverse global warming on our own in this room. But without us making good choices fast, we could definitely stop anyone else in the world from being able to fix it. Without us, the Paris COP21 target is just not achievable. And without us, here in this room, the change makers, the people that go to the conferences, the people that want to do things differently, our industry is not going to move. Let's be honest. Historically, it has not demonstrated a great ability to change. And that's why we believe that this is our choice. If cement was a country, it would be the third biggest contributor of carbon emissions in the world at 8%, behind China and the USA. That's mental. Let's just repeat that. If cement was a country, it would be the third biggest contributor out of just behind the USA and China. And it's not just the building part that's a challenge, it's the operating part too. So worldwide, there's 1.6 billion air conditioning units in use at this point in time. That's already pretty bad for the environment because it's using a lot of energy and they hold a lot of refrigerant gases, which pound for pound are worse for the environment than carbon. But by 2050, looking at those kind of population growth and urbanization, it's anticipated there will be 5 billion air conditioning units in use. And that's not good at all, because that's a vicious cycle. The more energy we use, the hotter it's going to get, so the more we'll turn on the air conditioning units and the more energy we'll use. It's not the cycle we like. I'm just going to pause there, because I'm in a room full of engineers, and you all understand data, you love science. We're all geeks, in some respects. And those are facts. Big, clear, slightly alarming facts. And we all kind of know that to tackle climate change at this scale, at first starts with policy. The UK has been the first major economy in the world to set a net zero carbon emissions target in law. Just, New Zealand has just done the same, right? It's a 2050 target. I understand there's a similar in Victoria. But to get there, the change needs to start now. So what can we do to help make that happen? At Mace, we're advocating change through all of our people. We're changing how we work, not just in the UK, and not just because government is telling us to, but globally, wherever we work. We have a vision to be the industry leader in shaping cities and building sustainable communities. And to get there, each and every day, we're asking our people to pursue a better way for construction. We're asking them to make good choices. This man has made a good choice. This is Scott Baker. He's an electrical engineer on one of our biggest construction projects at present, the Battersea Power Transformation in London. One Saturday morning, Scott's mucking around in his garage with some lights that he got from site, a bit like us engineers might do on a weekend, right? And his daughter, Rose, who's 9 and is stood there watching him, says, "Dad, those things you're getting out of boxes and unwrapping the plastic on and throwing the plastic away, that's not very good for the environment, is it?" "No, Rose, no, it's not." And that afternoon, Scott gets to thinking, each and every light fitting that his team is buying, installing, is delivered in a box, but wrapped in single-use plastic. On his last job, the biggest and supposedly greenest corporate HQ in London, his team had installed 98,000 light fittings. They had a member of staff whose sole job it was to open the box, take the fitting out, unzip the plastic, remove the fitting and hand it to the person installing, and chuck the plastic away. That could be the most boring job in construction. So on Monday morning, Scott calls his suppliers and says, "I've got a challenge for you. I'd like to remove all single-use plastic from Battersea Power Station. Come back to me this week, let me know what you can do." And later that week, he gets his suppliers into a room and says, "So?" And they say, "Do you know what, Scott? We probably could do it, but you have to take the risk if anything turns up on site and it's damaged." And Scott thinks that's a risk worth taking. And the results have proved him right. Scott made a great choice. This year, Scott's action has prevented the generation of 16 million single-use plastic bags. You see, his suppliers woke up to the fact too, so they removed all single-use plastic from everything that they supply. And where they really, really needed something, like tying cables, they're now using recycled paper. And it's paid off on site too. He doesn't need to employ that person, and he hasn't had to pay to remove what could have been half a ton of waste, which is a lot of wheelie bins. And his daughter, Rose, is delighted that she asked that question. It's a cool story, huh? And the interesting point, it doesn't just make sense environmentally, it makes sense financially. Scott's choice saved money. It saved money for the client, it saved money for Mace, it saved a hell of a lot of money for his supplier. We didn't have to pay to be sustainable, it paid to be sustainable. Us climate evangelists have been getting knocked back for years by the money men. It doesn't make financial sense. It costs too much. You can't prove the benefits. It's rubbish. That perception is 10 years old. It's not true anymore, and the money men know it. The pension funds, the investors with long-term fiscal responsibility, want to and are invested in sustainable projects. It's easier to attract financing if you have clear evidence of your green credentials. So if you're here and you're a client or a developer and you need convincing that sustainability is the right thing to do, go and talk to where the smart money is. Go and talk to the big serious funds. It's where that cash is available. It's also where the better tenants and buyers are going to be. And if you're an architect or an engineer in the room, guess what? It's where your clients will be attracting more money. And if you're a builder like me or a supplier, then yeah, same applies. It's money. So I'm just going to leave here with a quick call to arms, right? I was practicing this speech back home in the UK, and my youngest son says to me, perhaps a bit inspired by Rose, well, what are you going to do about it? And I said, well, I'm going to Melbourne, and I'm hoping that I can encourage a room full of engineers to make better choices. Because Mace can't do this on our own. We're a 4 billion Aussie dollar business in a 14 trillion Aussie dollar industry. An industry that is going to have to build more homes, more infrastructure, but has to do that better, that has to make better choices. Reversing climate change is not going to happen without the construction industry. It's not going to happen without our industry making those better choices. Doing things better or doing better things. Gradually or suddenly. Possible or impossible. And at Mace, we were founded on pursuit of a better way. That inherently means that we believe that things are possible. And today we ask our colleagues to continue that mission. We all have to believe in a better way. And what that means is that we have to believe that tomorrow can be better today, and that we have the opportunity to make that so. And you're all engineers. That's your opportunity as much as it is mine. So let's go make that happen. Thank you. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you. That's music to my ears because, yes, we need to involve the construction industry if we are going to solve climate change. Now, a reminder to everyone to send through your questions, and you can do so via the app, but also that the most popular questions are the ones that get asked generally, so do vote, and if you want to see what the latest tally order is, then do refresh. And I actually decided to forego my MC privilege and I submitted my question via the app, but it's equal first actually, voting-wise. But Mark Bennett has asked a similar question. Do you have any bad Daves that you had to let go because they couldn't embrace the change required? My question is sort of similar. I said, have you had pushback from builders, construction workers and or their unions?
So we're quite fortunate in the fact of I think we've got a really clear vision and kind of that we do. And I think as a result of being really overt out to achieve, I talked about in the last one, I think you tend to attract good Daves and bad Daves. And, you know, there is a lot of bad Daves out there within the industry. There's a lot of rather than kind of perhaps more long-term aspirational views. But the point of the speech there, we have to change that. We've all got to make better choices.
Good challenge. Apologies to happens to be Dave. Miles asked, did you track injuries or incidents when components were assembled in locations?
So it's a very but we believe that any work that we do off-site versus on-site is inherently twice as productive and reduces our safety by, so we get 1 in 10 of the incident rate.
Oh.
So it's phenomenal. And you know, because you control the environment better, and that's not the factory was fantastic in terms of safety results, but on any traditional construction project in any part of the world, the environment is not controlled, the result of all those variables, you know, safety incidents happen. So equals much better safety.
Now, currently the most popular question isn't actually a question. It just says from Jane, Matt Gough for PM. Smaller engineering practitioners make a difference when the cost of access to technology can be prohibitive.
So we think technology is an enabler, but it's not the panacea. And I think today it's really about empowering us to kind of have those conversations and to start to make those challenges. And you know, the financial aspect of it now stacks up. And I think, you know, industry, society, policy at all levels are very kind of alive to the fact of we have to make some transformational changes and fast. And if you're a smaller engineering practice or if you're a bigger fish in that pond, you know, I don't believe that we work in an environment now where any good ideas that are going to have a positive impact on, be it carbon, which we work, or be it the innovation on our projects, are really going to get squashed down. I'd really just to put your hand up and pursue a better way. That's what we're trying to do.
The question I'll put to you is from Adrian, because this did actually come up in yesterday's discussion, and I don't think we've yet found an answer we're happy with. What's the concrete of 2050?
Good question. Probably still concrete in some aspects, but there is a huge amount of research and stuff sitting in the lab ready to go that reduces the kind of material, reduces the impact, etc. You know, concrete planks, and because of the nature of that, that means we don't have to cure on site. So lo and behold, we can kind of do that in a more controlled environment and reduce the cement and therefore the embodied carbon. You know, there's lots of great science and technology there already. As an industry, we've been terrible at taking stuff out of the lab and rolling it out. That's, I think, where the engineers play a part. They call it the valley of death. There's the clever stuff from research industry, and there's that bit in between, which is where I think we all need to perhaps play our role in accelerating the change.
Am I dreaming asking this, but do you think the potential for something that's either a new replacement that locks carbon? Because, you know, constructions last a long time. Could we have a concrete replacement?
You could be something, Wendy.
Unfortunately, I'm not an engineer.
I went to talk room 218, you know, and there are people that are trying to challenge this and trying to make it happen. And I think it's just that recognition at all levels that we do need to change. To each other, let's collaborate, let's work together, let's pursue that better way.
One more pearl of wisdom to leave with everyone before we go to Melbourne. Morning tea.
Morning tea. I mean, I would hate to keep people away from the lattes and the muffins for too much longer. I think just the important part for us is that the change is all about people. You know, it was referenced in the conversations before. You know, it's all about, we really have to feel the ability to do things better. So, you know, if we take anything away from today, I don't think it's all skills necessarily. It's the culture, right? It's the thinking, it's the encouraging the challenge, etc. We have to be open to that.
Good point. Well, that concludes this session. We're now going to thank our morning tea sponsor today, BHP. We look forward to welcoming you back at 11 to hear from our international panel discussion on engineering education. But before we go to the break, please join me in thanking Matt.